This week I'll be riding Kawasaki's ZX6, Louise will be riding one of these, and Rod will be riding one of these. Hi there and welcome to Bike File with me, Wazza, here at Donington Park with the lovely GSXR 750 you see here. Now this is a very, very naughty motorcycle. Don't be fooled for a minute by the rather comfortable riding position, or the handy little space under the seat for your bits and bobs, or even the little clock up the top that tells you the time. Because deep down, this is one screaming, nutty banshee of a motorcycle that will make you do very bad things. It could lead to the early demise of your licence, a dwindling of your civilised circle of friends who are no longer able to cope with your increasingly rabid riding habits, and it may eventually turn you into a gibbering wreck. But believe me, it is worth it. It's that motor that does it. Sure, she's all fluffy bunny and civilised below 7,000 RPM, and sure, you can potter around without ever going above there and still happily get yourself to 110 mile an hour. But where would the fun be in not taking things a little bit further? Past 7,000 RPM and there's a change in engine note as the intakes beneath you start gobbling more fresh air into the airbox and things begin to pick up as life gets interesting. But don't back off yet because there's more. However, get past 10 grand and the fireworks really go off. The front end goes light, the motor screams like a caged beast let free and the whole bike catapults itself into the sunset. It feels absolutely brilliant. It's not the most powerful bike about, although 125 brake horse at the back wheel ain't to be sniffed at in anyone's book, but the GSXR 750 is the most exciting 4-cylinder sports bike on the market today, and that's a fact. She's a true modern classic. The GSXR Thou may outpunch her, an R1 might outstomp her, but for sheer banzai redlining pleasure, nothing else comes close. Anyway, enough of me and the GSXR for now, because it's over to Louise. What have you got for us this week, darling?
This is a scooter, or is it a bike? Scooter, bike, scooter, whatever you want to call it. Its real name is the Gilera DNA 180 and it's already established itself as a twist and go scooter. It's the official scooter of the MotoGP series and it's available in 3 forms. There's a 50cc, which has been a great hit with the kids. There's a 125, but today I've got my mitts on this one. It's the 180. Well, they say bigger's better, so let's take a look. The 180 is a very competent automatic with handling not dissimilar from that of big-wheeled scoots. Its 14-inch wheels give the bike a larger turning circle than other scoots, but this doesn't detract from the fun to be had on one of these bikes. Conventional step-through designs have been overlooked in favour of this big bike-orientated styling. The DNA also has a host of bike-esque features. It's got a neat little rev counter sat in this funky dash, it's made from a twin spar alley frame and it's got disc brakes front and rear. And all these things combine to make a very different scooter indeed. The engine, Piaggio's 4-stroke leader lump, pumps out as much power as any equivalent 2-stroke motor and is also liquid-cooled, making any tuning you might fancy a possibility. Now the great thing about this engine is the automatic gearbox, which makes the bike accessible to all. Similar to their own runner, the DNA is a barrel of fun to ride, making even a trip to work a pleasurable experience. Yes, I did say commute to work, because this engine will quite happily propel this bike to speeds of up to 75 miles per hour. And unlike other motorbikes, lift up this area, which looks like the tank, and you'll find room to store your helmet. Price-wise, the Daddy DNA sits favourably next to the other sporty, larger capacity scoots, with an on-the-road price of $2,649. Now in handling terms, the DNA is more bike than scooter. It turns into corners well and it holds the line better than most. There are limits, however. The DNA is still a scooter underneath, and although the engine produces a fair amount of power, the initial throttle response is a little sluggish, certainly compared to the 50 and the 125 versions. However, on the upside, you have this sporty riding position and these little foot pegs to perch on, giving you more of a feel of what's going on underneath. You know, riding this bike, I almost feel like I'm cheating. I'm fooling people into thinking that I can ride a big motorbike. But the thing is, I don't care because I've had heaps of fun on it all day. And if you're a learner, you've just passed your test, whatever, you don't want any gears to think about until you've built up your confidence, then a bike like this is perfect. It really is in a class of its own. Performance, 7 out of 10. It's got a reasonably powerful engine, but it is a little bit on the porky side, and its lack of throttle response means it's not so handy around town. Try before you buy. Do try the 50 and the 125 versions. You'll probably find them a little more responsive. Comfort, oh dear, 6 out of 10 I'm afraid. You see, the thing is, when you first hop on the DNA, it feels fine, nice and comfy, great for a trip to work or a little shopping expedition. The problem is, you'd think the 180 is suitable for a longer journey, but 20 minutes in the saddle and that comfort factor soon diminishes. Only a 6. Build quality, 7 out of 10. Now the Gileras are not particularly well put together, but you can forgive the odd wonky headlight and the small gaps in the bodywork because they've used fine quality materials. They're Italians, you see. Now the question is it value for money? It's priced at $2,649 for this 180 model, and it's definitely one of the cheaper big scoots out there on the market. So if you're looking for something with big bike looks, no gears to worry about, and just want to tootle around on a scooter, then I think we should give it 8 out of 10. I think it's a fair price, don't you? And as for street cred, whew, a whopping 9 out of 10. If this doesn't make your average city slicker do a double take, then nothing will. It's got far more than your average twist and go, loads of street cred, it's right up there.
DNA 180, it's quite a clever little bike because they're like a scooter, but they look more like a motorcycle, called a hybrid. Decent power, good for nipping around the city.
Good, brave step from Gilera to combine the motorcycle and the scooter. In many ways they've lost the best element of the scooter in terms of storage and practicality. Definitely appeals to the younger market. Pity it's got that 4-stroke engine in. Had it had the 180 runner engine, the 2-stroke in, probably would have been more fun. I don't like it close up at all.
Welcome back to the GSXR 750, and before we go any further, it's time to talk sensible, because this bike, being a 750, will be cheaper to insure than any Fireblade, R1 or GSXR 1000 you care to mention. And in the real world, this counts for a lot. One area that ain't so hot, however, is the brakes. 6-pot Takikos they may be, and they do look the part, but the feel at the lever is somewhat wooden and the power ain't the greatest either. They're alright, but against the competition these days, that's all they are. And don't bother trying braided hoses as a cheap fix either. All they'll do is starve the system of a little more feel. And while we're whinging, I'll take a pop at the steering damper too. First up, it's ugly, but then people say that about me all the time, so I suppose I shouldn't hold that against it. Worst of all, it's not adjustable, it's a bit too severe, and frankly, below 50 miles an hour, it makes this bike steer with all the poise and grace of a drunken hippo. Get rid of the steering damper and marvel in the difference it makes to the bike. I did 15,000 flat-out road and track miles on one of these I had as a long-term test bike a couple of years ago, and I didn't have any worries despite not having the damper on at all. So if you feel you do want a steering damper, then go ahead and buy yourself an adjustable one. Leave it off unless you're going absolutely bananas, but whatever you do, ditch that stocker. Well, that's it for part 1, but join us again in part 2 when we'll be back with some more silky smooth two-wheeled action on Bike File. Hi there, we're back and this is part 2 of Bike File. But enough of the moaning already, because despite its imperfections, this bike is fun to ride. It's a real rider's bike and a supreme wheelie tool. Intoxicatingly, involvingly fast, and it is a handler. The GSXR's steering is precise and sharp, and this bike will still gladly outhandle just about any other four-cylinder sports bike out there, apart from perhaps the new Fireblade. Weighing the same as the average Supersport 600, the GSXR is plenty flickable, and the suspension is remarkably quality for standard issue kit. Mid-corner, despite Donington's lumps and bumps, she's still beautifully composed. But words can't truly do this bike justice, so why don't you come ride with me and see what it's all about. And after hammering down the start-finish straight, it's time to get on the brakes, put up with the fact they're not exactly brilliant, give them a mega squeeze and throw it in hard for Redgate. It tightens up on the way out, so at this point you're going to be pretty happy about the extra ground clearance and decent steering the GSXR's got. Third gear out of the corner, hook fourth on the exit, we're headed down Starkey Straight, coming under the Dunlop Bridge, and you'll find you're just in the right spot for a nice wheelie over the crest as we go. And now over to Rod.
Heritage and tradition are terms which seem to get used by marketing departments to describe any motorcycle that's been in production for longer than 10 minutes. But if you're looking for real heritage, there's one Italian manufacturer that's been making big, lusty V-twins for nigh on 80 years. That company is Moto Guzzi, and this is their latest V11 Sport Scura. Moto Guzzi know a thing or two about manufacturing big V-twins, and the Scura is the latest in a line that started with the legendary V7. The 1970s saw the Guzzi Le Mans dominate everyone's street bike wish list, a domination born of power, handling and sheer Italian desirability. The 90s saw a downturn in the company's fortunes as high-tech Japanese sports bikes took chunks out of Guzzi's modest market share, but new owners Aprilia have invested massively in the company. One of the results of that investment is the V11 series, and with the Sport Scura, Moto Guzzi are definitely back in the game. While the engine design may lose out to more high-tech options in terms of sheer power, Guzzi have wisely understood the attraction of the torque of their existing power plant. State-of-the-art fuel injection and engine management by Marelli helped this 1064cc engine produce 70 foot-pounds of torque at only 6,000 RPM. On the road, that makes for a willing motor, always ready to answer the spur with oodles of controllable power. Now there's a tradition many manufacturers would sell their grannies for. Guzzi have also kept the faith with their maintenance-free shaft drive transmission, now complemented by a 6-speed box and new, lighter clutch to cut down on torque reaction. The chassis design for the V11 is completely new, consisting of a main spine section bolted to the engine and using it as a stressed member. And exclusively, the Scura comes with all-in suspension front and rear. The 43mm upside-down forks and cantilever rear end fully adjustable for spring rate, compression and rebound damping. Brembo Goldline brakes and fat 17-inch wheels complete the package. But where the Scura really demands your attention is in its sheer style. It may be as much a cliché as pasta and Pavarotti, but the Italians really do have a flair for styling that leaves the opposition gasping. And check out those cheeky satin red footrest hangers peeking out like a flash of suspender from a posh Signorina. Fail to be seduced by this bike if you can. On the road, the Scura feels safe and solid, eating up the miles with a relaxed, pulsating beat. Rider comfort is good, with a wide, comfortable seat, low bars and high footrests that give plenty of ground clearance. The Bridgestone Battle Axe tyres in our test bike gave reassuring levels of grip, and the Goldline brakes are the best in the business. This is a great bike on fast A and B roads, capable of rewarding the rider with mile after mile of rapid, satisfying progress. Marks out of 10 then. Performance, 8 out of 10. While it's not the fastest bike on the street, the Guzzi is lots of fun to ride. Chassis and suspension are top notch and give lots of feedback to the rider. The pulsating beat of that big V-twin engine becomes so addictive that you'll be looking for excuses to take the bike out just one more time. For comfort, 7. The low bars and high set footrests mean this bike is more at home on fast roads than popping down to the shops. The riding position is good, and that tiny nose fairing does more to deflect wind blast than you'd expect. The seat hump is removable for pillion use, so you can take a friend. Build quality, 8 out of 10. On the strength of our test bike, Aprilia take finish quality very seriously. Paint finish is good, and the alternative metallic colours are deep and lustrous. The carbon fibre and stainless exhaust system should last forever, and detailing extends to stainless braided hoses. My only reservation is a black wrinkle finish on the crankcase and rear drive, which may take some keeping up to. Value for money, 6 out of 10. Priced at just over £8,300 on the road, the Skura faces some tough opposition. BMW's R1100S takes a higher tech approach and undercuts the Guzzi on price. The Buell X1 Lightning also comes in slightly cheaper and takes a similar, though transatlantic, approach to traditional V-twin design. Guzzi do offer a 2-year unlimited mileage warranty, and spares and servicing backup is good. The Guzzi is likely to hold its trade-in value quite well too. Street cred, 8 out of 10. Classic name, classic sound, and drop-dead gorgeous looks. This is a real motorcycle from one of the world's longest established manufacturers.
Moto Guzzi V-Sport, don't like it. It's big, it's an old engine. They've used the same engine for years, very lumpy, doesn't really handle. Out of date really, but if you're after something different, maybe something to go for, but Japanese are always better.
I'd really like Moto Guzzi to sell more and to do better. I'd like to see more of them. I don't personally think they've evolved the product enough over the years. The V11, for example, wouldn't compete with the ST4 or the Cagiva Raptor, but I'm glad they are still producing. Nice to see them.
Welcome back to Suzuki GSXR 750 land, where it's conclusion time. So, first up, performance. We're going to give this bike an 8 out of 10, only losing marks for those slightly iffy wooden brakes and that rather nasty clumpy steering damper. Otherwise, the awesome handling, that screaming rabid motor, plus the fact that this is a vaguely usable modern sports bike, put it right up there at the top of the tree. And it's a 7 out of 10 for comfort. The fairing's good and protective, the seat's dead squashy, and the riding position is surprisingly good for a bike as sporty as this one is. Marks are only lost for the fact it will bring on wrist ache pretty quickly in town, and your knees are going to get a bit cramped if you're over 6 foot. So what about the build quality? Well, I reckon it's going to be another 7 here. Like I said earlier, I ran one of these for 15,000 miles as a long-termer, and in that time it really stood up pretty well to all sorts of weather and abuse. Only thing I would say it would lose marks for is the downpipes, which rusted, well, quite badly. But I've noticed on this bike, Suzuki have now put stainless ones on, so it's going to jump from 7 to an actual 7.5. The GSXR 750 is an often overlooked little gem as people rush to buy Fireblades, R1s, GSXR 1000s and the like. And at £7,800 list, the GSXR 750 is well priced. And who could forget that lower insurance bracket than the bigger boys too. Oh, and because she's perceived as slightly less desirable, you're more likely to get a deal on one too. And on the street cred front, it's 9 out of 10 for this bike. The GSXR 750 has always been a bad boy tool, and this one is no different. Where the 1000 is the obvious choice as the uber tool of the moment for the man with all the gear and no idea, the 750 marks you out as someone who's made perhaps a rather more seasoned choice in their sports motorcycle. It's a ripper, but it really does have to be a blue and white one. We might have to take a point off for this red.
Suzuki GSXR 750, probably the nutter's choice really of bikes, because it's a lot harder to get out of it what you need than the GSXR 1000. Still handles really well, and a really nice bike.
What can you say about one of the bikes that won the award of the year? Suzuki, absolutely brilliant manufacturer, and the 750, an all-round bike for track days, being a hooligan coming to and from work, Absolutely awesome bike. A couple of lads here have got them at Manchester, and they're a cracking tool.
Another benchmark sports bike. Again, that's been about at least 15 years that I know of. Very, very capable. For years you saw it winning at national and international level bike racing. There are so many others like it, the Kawasaki ZX7. It's another inline-4 super sports bike, but albeit one that's very, very good, very capable.
Well, I'm afraid that's it for this week's episode of Bike File, but do join us next week when we'll have another splendid selection of dazzling metal for you to enjoy.